thank you so much. You're the editor of the Student Times. Thank you so much for the question. You know, is your job as a journalist to ask the challenging questions? And I was a journalist once, and that's what journalism should do. Firstly, I want to start off by saying that the Gender Recognition Act was brought in to give rights to trans people in Ireland, and I have no doubt it was brought in from a place of compassion, and that's a good thing. However, nobody at the time, legislators did not look around the corner. They did not look and think about the unintended consequences of that legislation. And now what we see in Ireland and in other jurisdictions who have done the same thing is there is a conflict of rights when it comes to sports, when it comes to prisons, when it comes to safe spaces, intimate spaces, changing rooms, toilets, and issues, parts of areas of life where we need single-sex spaces. And the reason we have single-sex spaces for women and girls is so that we can have equality outside the home. And this was completely common sense up until a moment ago. Because of the orthodoxy and the official narrative around trans rights, the whole narrative in the media and generally has been, and in the establishment in fact, has been nothing to see here. This is, you know, if you're against this, you're far right somehow, or you're somehow a bigot. My whole life has really been about protecting the rights of women and children and child safeguarding, and so therefore I am unafraid to look at it through this lens and really to grasp the nettle. And you know, I do so from a place of compassion, from a considered place, from a reasoned place, which is measured. And my whole work with the Countess has been to facilitate a conversation which is calm, compassionate, considered. And because of that work, that rigorous research-based work, evidence-based work, our organisation has presented twice to the UN as subject matter experts with regard to the impact on women and girls. We presented to Salim, the rapporteur for women and girls, and also we presented with regard to single-sex sports. You know, whether or not you agree, it is simply a fact that there is a conflict of rights when, for example, a boy of 12 can fill out a form and play ladies Gaelic football in this country, when we are putting men who are, in the words of the judge at the time, a clear and present danger to women, when we're housing them with women. These women are vulnerable, and I think it's important to have empathy for both sides of this debate, and to be able, as a democracy, to have the conversation. We have to be able to have these conversations without one side being labelled or shut down. And I promise, as a senator, if I am elected, that I will continue that work in terms of facilitating a conversation where not just one narrative is accepted. And with regard to legislation, similarly with hate speech, you know, it's really important to elect a senator who has that incisive mind and capability and can look at legislation, but also can challenge it and challenge the orthodoxy if necessary.
Okay, thank you, Laoise. Paul Mulville, you
just very briefly, as a party, the Social Democrats, we're proud to support transgender people. We had a candidate in the recent local elections for a transgender background. We've seen attacks in our public libraries. We've seen in our County Dublin, for example, a good friend here who stood up for the library service and for the librarians in our County Dublin. People are spreading fear, disinformation about transgender rights, and we support librarians when they stand up and support their trade unions, when they fight back against the fear and disinformation that's being spread.
Okay, anyone else want to come in on that? Sadhbh O'Neill?
That's very common by Irish rhetoric from Laoise. And it's ironic because I have a daughter called Laoise, by the way, so I can't be cross with you. I can't. But you know, you describe trans people as they're a kind of a menace, and that's so deeply offensive to trans people. I have friends who are trans people, and but very few of them, because there are actually very few people. There are very few people we're talking about here, and the way you talk about it makes it sound like there's a kind of an epidemic, you know, of people out there who are trying to get onto sports teams and get into prison in the wrong cubicles. And it's just really frustrating, because what trans people want is respect and equality, and that is not so much to ask for in a world where we're supposed to guarantee civil liberties for everyone.
Okay, thank you, Sadhbh. I'll let you back in, Laoise, because I know you object there to the summarisation and the phrase used.
Object to the framing of that. I mean, I'm not anti-trans in any way. If I was, I wouldn't have a trans person working so closely with me and supporting my campaign. Many trans people are not happy with the current legislation, with current extremism. I mean, I have spoken at events where trans activists have actively either assaulted attendees, private citizens who've come to my events, or in fact try to scream down and shout down women who are talking about issues like domestic violence, or issues like issues where they're highly vulnerable discussing these matters. I have always, in my work with Countess, tried to really reduce the heat and come from a place of compassion. So I reject any framing that anything I do comes from anything other than a place of compassion. But it's important to look at both sides. That's our job as legislators.
Okay, Laoise de Brún. Anyone else want to come in on that?